What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Actuali Podcast. I'm Chris.
I'm DJ.
And today we are going to cover an amazing event that just occurred in DC this past Sunday. I was actually out there with my girlfriend, Kim. Hello, Kim. And we had an amazing time. We got to see so many amazing people like Jordan Peterson, Russell Brand, Tulsi Gabbard, Robert F. Kennedy, Rob Schneider was out there. And Brandon Straka of the Walkaway movement, and among others. And it was a bipartisan call for unity in this time of censorship and creeping authoritarian overreach in our country and around the world. If America falls to this authoritarian overreach, the rest of the world is almost certain to go along with it, and that would be a dire future for. I got some footage while I was out there. You know, it's okay, but there's actually a much better source of footage. One of the organizers, Brett Weinstein, of the Eric and Brett Weinstein Bros, actually helped organize this event, and he live streamed the entire event on his channel. A lot of the participants live streamed this on their own channels as well. So we're going to look at some footage from different attendees that spoke to this incredible crowd of bipartisan unity. It was so cool to see so many different people from across the political spectrum coming together. And so, yeah, let's go ahead and look at our first clip.
Oh, and there's a live stream of it if you want to see his perspective as well. So we have a live stream of
We do have a live stream up. The quality is grainy because I was live streaming along with a lot of other people at the same time. But if you'd like to see the attendees' eye view, so to speak, the rally goers' eye view from the crowd.
It's just amazing cool. You can have that many people like streaming and using their
same
phones
time.
and doing all that stuff. 10 years ago, no way.
Right.
No,
you really couldn't. This is actually, and I didn't even think about that when I, took a camera and my phone and I'm live streaming on the phone until it runs out of battery. Then I pull out the very camera that we're streaming on right now, and I took some more footage. You're not even thinking that they were going to have the whole event recorded and live streamed themselves, but it was actually very high production value what turned out. They did a great job, and I haven't been to a major rally in DC since the war in Iraq. I was not expecting that, but of course that certainly made sense, and I'm glad that they did such a good job recording, sharing everything with the world, because Tulsi's video alone has already had over a million views, 1.7 million views as of today. So let's jump on over and let's hear what Tulsi Gabbard has to say at this event.
Who we choose to be our president and commander-in-chief is a critical decision. It always is, but in the Harris-Biden administration, so it matters very much who we choose as our commander-in-chief.
That's a disturbing fact, that we are perilously close to nuclear war. The atomic clock has not been closer since the last atomic bomb was dropped on Japan, I would imagine.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of money to be spent and made in warfare.
True that. Yeah, jumping back and letting Tulsi continue now.
Now, President Eisenhower was conducting insider trading, investing in these very big defense contractors just before they send out another $8 or $10 billion to Ukraine. Just the other day, we had the Pennsylvania governor, Shapiro, who flew in President Zelensky on a U.S. military plane.
Oh, the booze.
Not so that they could stand together and call for an end to the war. No. They instead went to a factory that makes bombs, where Governor Shapiro, with a grin on his face, signed one of those bombs. How sick of a state are we as a country when our elected leaders celebrate death, war, and destruction?
Yep. The establishment wants death and war.
Right.
And sell it to us, the American people, as an American jobs and economic plan. This is Kamala Harris's opportunity economy. More war, more money for the military-industrial complex.
Well,
That's
yeah.
right. Yeah.
Remember when they were like, while they were signing the bombs, or the whole signing of the bomb thing came out, and even some of the people I follow, because I follow like a pretty wide spectrum of people, were like, well, that area, what was it, Pennsylvania, a certain area, that that's what they do, that's their industry, so that's jobs, like it's good jobs. It's like, yeah, but I mean, yeah,
That's the argument, huh?
but murdering people we shouldn't be murdering, or assisting people in murdering people that shouldn't be murdered. I don't okay, maybe it's not murder, maybe it's all warfare, whatever, but it's like, oh, it's jobs, yeah, it's good jobs. It's like, well, no, better jobs would be like manufacturing things that aren't, I do believe we should continue manufacturing bullets and everything, and Americans should keep buying them and storing them, but this, like ammunition that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars just for one of them, or just like, man, just disingenuous is light.
Yeah. There is a lot of money to be made in the business of war, and Dwight Eisenhower certainly did warn us, as Tulsi mentions here, that we should be wary of unwarranted acquisition of our government, control over our government by the military-industrial complex, the war profiteers that have become so powerful they can indeed influence whole governments to their favor. So Tulsi continues on now about the human cost of war, and she would know as she was overseas in Iraq and Afghanistan.
My first deployment to Iraq was in 2005. I was serving in the state legislature at the time. I stepped down from that seat and volunteered to deploy in a medical unit, where I was confronted with the high human cost of war. It was the first time in my life that I had experienced and seen firsthand the war profiteering that goes on.
She was the captain of that medical unit, so she had to look at the deaths and injuries every single morning.
For those of you who served in Iraq at that time, and I hear it's still going on in Europe today, KBR Halliburton remains one of the biggest defense contractors profiting off of war. We had KBR Halliburton logos on our porta potties, on our tents, and on our trash cans. A friend of mine who was deployed to Poland recently said, nothing has changed. Now, who was one of the people that profited off of this? Dick Cheney.
Dick Cheney.
Where is Dick Cheney today? Dick Cheney is standing proudly with Kamala Harris.
Yeah, proudly endorsing Kamala.
Who has said that she is proud and honored to have his endorsement and his support.
That is so telling. That is so telling, because any of us that remember the war in Iraq know that George Bush Jr. and Dick Cheney should have been convicted as war criminals.
Now, for the young ones who may not remember, Dick Cheney was the architect of the entire disaster that has been created with all of the problems that we're seeing play out in the Middle East today and other parts of the world. He was the architect of the lie about the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. He was the architect behind the regime change war and the destabilization in Iraq that caused such chaos and loss of life and destruction that created the fertile ground for the rise of ISIS. That is the Dick Cheney who Kamala Harris is honored to have his support.
That's it.
So for those of you who may be at home watching, or for those of you who have friends who are still not quite sure who to vote for in this election, I'll make it very simple. A vote for Kamala Harris is a vote for Dick Cheney.
Yep.
A vote for Kamala Harris is a vote for the neocon warmongers. A vote for Kamala Harris is a vote for the military-industrial complex. A vote for Kamala Harris is a vote for nuclear war.
Oof. She speaks the truth, though. The neocons that ran that disastrous illegal war in Iraq are now supporting Kamala Harris. This should tell you where the current state of the Democratic Party actually is today. It has been completely taken over, as both sides of our government have been for some time, by incredibly powerful corporate interests, including the war profiteers that make up the military industrial complex.
Yep.
So that's that.
Well, follow the
man.
evil where it goes, And hey, don't vote for them.
Please,
Try to
God,
convince your friends
please.
and just be like, look, they'll love you as a person, but this is what you're voting for.
People
You're
are
voting for war. You're voting for death. And it's not just death in war. It's also death here at home. The kids are sick. The old people are sick.
Yeah,
People
right.
are just dying left and right from stuff that they weren't dying from not too long ago. Our birth rates are dropping. They're plummeting.
And
and,
we
you know-
covered that in our last episode, guys. Check that out.
And voting's really not enough either. You got to actively participate with your community
Yes.
and, be vocal, because if you don't say nothing, nobody can hear nothing. And then you get thrown on the train with the rest of us. Well, why didn't you say nothing?
Yeah. Democracy
Yeah.
dies in silence, as Washington Post likes to slogan themselves. But it's true. We need to be able to talk and hash these things out, because this is a system by, of, and for the people. At least that's how it was intended to be operated and run. And we have let that get away from us. We have let the wealthy, moneyed powers, the aristocracy here, take over this system of self-governance, and are now using it for their own ends, their own enrichment, and running completely counter to our constitutional protections, with no care for the constitution of this government that actually allowed these companies a place to enrich themselves in the first place.
Well, there you go. Spend your money wisely.
Yeah, really.
You
So
know?
we're going to go on here now. Tulsi is going to continue now speaking on the Patriot Act.
Oh, yeah, that thing.
Mm-hmm.
You won't hear anyone in the mainstream propaganda media talking about the reality of the threat of war that we face. A war that threatens not only our physical safety, but our liberty and our freedom. Just as we have seen through every major war and conflict before, those in power, those who gain from us being in a constant state of war, exploit that opportunity to take away more of our freedom. And as you know, once it's gone, we never get it back. The Patriot Act was shoved through and rushed through Congress in the days after the terrorist attack on 9/11.
I remember that.
Passing all of these egregious overreaches into our privacy and our civil liberties, violating the Fourth Amendment.
Dude, they can
not because they
disappear
were
you
truly needed
legally.
because of 9/11, but the national security state saw an opportunity and they took it.
Yeah,
And
they
they said to anyone who opposed the Patriot Act, you are a traitor to America if you vote no.
I remember that clearly. So our whole Congress was literally basically bullied into supporting this. And, anyone that was against the war in Iraq at the time also, as far as us, the people, were called traitors to our country. It was quite the propaganda effort. The vast majority of people after 9/11, due to the PTSD that event caused people, were for the war in Iraq, even though it had nothing to do with 9/11 whatsoever. But people were really looking for vengeance and somebody to blame. They showed us those planes flying into those towers hundreds of times a day. Every time they cut to commercial break, they would show it again with like suspenseful blockbuster sounding music and explosive sound effects and target reticules over graphics of the American map and so on and so forth. It was such a powerful conditioning scheme that they pulled off on us.
Nowadays, it's hard to find. It's hard to find that stuff to show to people.
It is, though.
You can't
Yeah.
go to their,
all-
official
all been
archives
scrubbed.
and
Yeah, you got to go to Internet Archive to find
Yeah.
some of this stuff.
and it's not on there, and with some of it too, because like a lot of it there wasn't cable to TV
Yeah.
or cable to the internet.
Yeah.
It was just you're watching it on TV.
So let's let Kamal, or I'm
Yeah.
sorry, Tulsi,
How
continue.
dare you?
continue here at calling out Kamala Kamala and the current administration.
It's Kamala.
Taking advantage of the fear and concern that the American people had during that time of tragedy and grief, here we are over 20 years later. The Patriot Act was just reauthorized once again this year.
Yep.
And rather than the usual rubber stamp that people like Tom Massey and Justin Amash and Rand Paul and I fought against every single time, they took what was an already egregious abuse of our constitutional rights and freedoms and fomented fear yet again of foreign threats to our democracy and our freedom to take an already bad Patriot Act even worse, to take away even more of our rights and freedoms, and both Democrats and Republicans voted for this. We will not see change unless we hold our leaders accountable to uphold and defend our Constitution that we've all who served sworn an oath to support and defend.
Yeah, and that means ridiculing them too.
Yeah, it means calling them out. The Patriot Act is insane. You guys should definitely look it up and learn about it. It's only patriotic in name. What a clever name. I love when they do this with bills. But it's pretty scary. But it of course is what gave us the surveillance state that we have today and made it legal according to them. To spy on American citizens, to be able to assassinate anybody that they deem a terrorist, even if it's an American citizen, to be able to jail you, disappear you, send you off to Abu Ghraib at the time, and put you through torture and so forth.
Yep, spy on you. You know, like how we're not supposed to be wiretapping the American citizens. Not anymore. You know.
Yeah. So now we're gonna hear Tulsi speak on the reason that everybody came together for this rally. This is some good stuff. Check this out, guys.
The fear-mongering will continue. The lies will continue. Their propaganda will continue because they don't care about the American people. They care about power and greed. Our opportunity is to recognize and acknowledge and speak proudly and truthfully that it does not have to be this way. This is not a foregone conclusion. The purpose for our gathering here today and across the country is to recognize that we have a no-fail mission before us, and it is an urgent mission. Peace, prosperity, and freedom in this country are what is on the line. And now is the time that we must be willing to set aside our differences, perhaps disagreements on other issues, and come together today in the same way that our founders did in the beginning of our country, to stand together on those fundamental principles that are enshrined in our Constitution and our ability to truly live in a peaceful, free, and prosperous society.
Amen. Yes. I really appreciate the way that she put that. That brings it home, man, because we really do. We need to put our differences aside right now, guys, and face the music. We are being divided. We are being played. We are being pit against each other in this country and around the world so that oligarchs, the filthy, rich elite that are the ones really pulling the levers behind the scenes, are trying to turn us against each other. It's all divide and conquer methodology. It's all really quite obvious once you take a step back and you look at what's happening. But we have to be willing to set aside our partisan, tribal belongings, and we got to be willing to question the groupthink of those tribes that we feel a part of. And we got to find out how much we're being lied to and turned against one another. And what a beautiful, exciting, hopeful awakening it is when we realize that we're actually all on the same team here and we're being played. So let's go on. So there's, of course, many more speakers at this event. It went on for 7 hours, and that's not even including the pre-show that started at 8 a.m. So the event ran from 12 to 7, but there was a pre-show. Went
Yeah,
on for 4 hours beforehand.
it's really interesting, you know, the idea that, because this isn't like a, I guess it is a political rally, but it's not like a political rally that would be like, oh, for this group of politicians that I want to go out of office or anything. It's like, this is like going to a music festival or something like that. It has more of that feel where people are like really excited to, like, you know, see these rock stars do their thing. And they even had, you know, musicians and stuff like that.
Yep,
And
musicians, comedians.
it's an interesting phenomenon that people will go and, you know, like sit for hours on end and listen to lectures and listen, you know, and it'd be really entertaining.
Yeah, this was totally unlike any normal political rally. It
Yeah,
wasn't like that at all. It was something else. And it really was to bring us together and allow that coalition of unlikely friends to meet each other and find out how much we actually agree on. So that, yeah, it was beautiful to be there. I mean, there's, you know, like I said in the beginning, there's people from all walks of life together. We're all so happy and kind, respectful. You could tell people were really happy to see each other there, and you felt safe and in a place where you belonged, which was a feeling that's been quite alien. It's been hard to find in these last several years. So it was quite a heartening event. Now we're going to look at Jordan Peterson and Russell Brand. What a moment this was to see live. Check this out, guys.
I'm an Englishman. I'm not from your great country. I admire it and you very deeply. I'm not traditionally what you might regard as a Republican or a Trump supporter. I have arrived on this stage via Hollywood, via liberalism, via all sorts of images of freedom, in the form of decadence and Epicureanism, the mindless pursuit of pleasure as a god. But I stand before you today, thankfully with a professional psychologist, because I could go crazy at any moment, baby, because I admire your spirit of freedom and your liberty. And it seems to me that once the MAGA movement is joined by Robert F. Kennedy, and Tulsi Gabbard, it becomes plain where the true anti-establishment sentiment lies. And it is not with the current incumbents of the White House, who for all their rhetoric advocate for further and deeper and more expensive wars, who seem keen to lubricate the pathway to authoritarianism and totalitarianism with talk of protecting the vulnerable. During the pandemic period, we saw how they protect the vulnerable by imprisoning the majority, by medicating everybody, by obfuscating facts, by concealing truth and controlling freedom. I, like many of the organisers of this event, believe that this is a critical moment for us. Not just the ordinary rank-and-file supporters of the Trump and MAGA movement, although to you, of course, I am open-hearted and full of deep and Christian love.
And I might disagree with you, but I love you.
But also to people that would never consider voting for Donald Trump. It is to them that I reach out in earnest and say, if you care about democracy, if you care about freedom, if you care about ending war, if you care about your children's health, ultimately, if you care about freedom, this is the time for you to do something decisive and different. I pray for a free and fair election in November. I pray that great American heroes like Edward Snowden will be revered and heard. That international martyrs like Julian Assange will be accredited.
Yes.
That the defense industry, the big food industry, the big agricultural industry that prohibits, curtails and oppresses ordinary farmers will face at last the serious opposition that it requires.
Yes, yes. We could let him go on and go on. We got a couple more clips of AP and Russell Brand here. But man, what a great message, and what an unlikely alliance. I love how he said, you know, Who would have thought? This is where the true anti-establishment movement lives. And what a critical moment we do find ourselves in here. With these unlikely allies, Jordan Peterson, Russell Brand, people across the ideological spectrum. And you can see the smiles and the joy in that crowd. And this is real joy, not that kind of plastic, artificial, commercial joy that the current infiltrated Democratic Party is trying to sell people. And I got to say, infiltrated Democratic Party, we need good and honest liberals in this country. Whatever's taken over the Democratic Party, as far as the power centers that are using it to their ends, is something else. And so when people complain about liberals or about Democrats, it kind of rubs me the wrong way, because we've got to get our language correct here. Reasonable, sane liberals are absolutely necessary to the health of our union. We are in a liberal democracy here, after all, but it is a republic democracy that is also designed to protect minorities, minority interests. And what a beautiful invention that humans miraculously came up with here in the U.S. It inspired the rest of the world to follow suit and found their own democracies. So we're going to zip ahead a little bit here and a little bit more from these. Let's jump on over.
And what is it that should bring us together as avatars of the freedom-loving democracies across the world? Well, so what's happening here is of immense international significance, as you know from watching how people around the world are, what would you say, looking to the United States in particularly to defend free speech, because if it's ever defeated here, it's gone everywhere.
Oh yeah, we're
and
screwed.
That would be a terrifying
y'all
thing.
do too.
And make no mistake, it's under true assault. In my country, there's a bill that's in second reading, which has pushed it quite a ways along the legislative route, Bill C-63, which literally allows people to be reported to a provincial magistrate under the possibility of 1 year's imprisonment in their own house with an ankle bracelet, with all their communication intercepted, in consequence of anyone's complaint that they're afraid that a hate speech event might occur in the next year.
That's insane, guys. Hold on.
It's that precog crime stuff.
Let's listen to that again, dude. Yeah, this is nuts.
There's a bill that's in second reading, which has pushed it quite a ways along the legislative route, Bill C-63.
C-63.
Which literally allows people to be reported to a provincial magistrate under the possibility of 1 year's imprisonment in their own house with an ankle bracelet, with all their communication intercepted, in
all communications are going to be monitored.
Consequence of anyone's complaint that they're afraid that a hate speech event might occur.
If anybody complains, a hate speech event has or even might occur
in the next year.
Nuts. In the next year.
That's Bill C-63.
What the hell?
And I've read that bill 3 times, because every time I read it and then think about it, I can't believe that I could have possibly understood it properly. And yet here we are. And there's very similar things going on in the UK. There was a terrible bill that was recently defeated in Ireland, for example, which would have put severe restrictions on free speech. And there are people in the UK who are being persecuted, and seriously persecuted, for expressing their opinions, offensive though they may be.
Yes, you can go to jail in the UK now for saying the wrong thing. Remember Ron Speak from 1984 by George Orwell?
Well, you remember when, did you see that footage of that like autistic girl? She, probably like 16 or 17 or something like that. And the lady cop got offended because she said she looked like a lesbian. And now, mind you, this autistic girl has an aunt or something that's a lesbian that has the same haircut.
Okay.
So it's just like that. And, it's an autistic person. They say things like that. And you're going to arrest a kid, and the kid's like freaking out, hiding in a cubby underneath the stairs while they're trying to yank her out of her own home just for saying something like that to the cops. I'm sorry, like...
That was in the UK?
Unless I'm... that was in the UK. Unless I'm threatening a cop, I can say whatever the hell I want to him, really. They work for me. That's how it should be, right? Now, don't go berating cops for nothing. Like, there's a lot of cool people who are cops, but just saying. But that's Britain, and I've heard from friends. It's like when I ask them, I'm like, well, where would you rather move, where you think you could be freer and have a better time living? And they're like, oh, Britain. Like, are you serious? Like half the crap I've seen on your social media would get you locked up in Britain now.
And there's the rub. Let's jump on back on what these guys have to say. Continuing.
Publicly in a manner that is absolutely necessary if you're going to support free speech. And we know that, well, the free speech that offends no one requires no defense, and that's partly because it has no content. If I only ever say something that everyone agrees with and produces no emotional response whatsoever, there's no point in even speaking. Because you don't have to concentrate on what's obvious if you're going to speak. You have to concentrate on what's contentious and disruptive. And there isn't anywhere on earth, and this certainly includes my home country, where the protections for that vital right are more thoroughly enshrined and deeply entrenched than they are in the United States. And seriously, thank God for that. It's so vital. It's so important. So, and so good on you for managing to maintain it, and don't be taking it for granted, because it could disappear at any time, as Robert Kennedy pointed out earlier. So.
That's right. And we've got footage from Robert coming up as well. Something else, isn't it, man? Bill C-63, guys. Look this up.
Yeah, one of these subheadings in Bill C-63 is duty to make certain content inaccessible. And I bet you they're not talking about illegal prawns. Now, mind you, if you're not legally minded and you don't want to read, oh my God, this bill is so freaking long. They've made a whole new, division of government. What is it called here? And there's so...
The Ministry of Truth that they tried to put in effect here.
And I'm looking at this bill, and it's just like, it's ridiculous. Duty to keep records.
Access to inventories, electronic data.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh, fun.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to really get into it because it's just a lot, and I haven't read it. But
we might get into some of this stuff at the very end of the episode, guys, so stay tuned, because we're going to go over some actual
craziness,
data. Though. But yeah, so... continuing on with Jordan Peterson and Russell Brand now.
It is significant that the Constitution is now being spoken of as an artifact that can be changed and altered. The New York Times recently said that it might be problematic. And when sacred documents, mean, you're right. It's definitely a negative thing.
Problematic.
There's no question about it. Because I suppose, yes, when the principle of free speech itself is under threat, then all other values, as you've explained many times to me, fall away in its wake. One thing that struck me, Dr. Peterson, when you were speaking just then, is the banalization of our culture. That means making it ordinary and sterile and lacking in glory and lacking in valor. The desacralization, that means the taking away of God from all things. It seems that there is a globalist and totalitarian scheme to replace God fundamentally, to remove God from the conversation.
Can you pause that real quick?
Yeah, that's a great point.
And I've been listening, how things pop up on the internet, but listening to a lot of people lately is, whether you're religious or not is not the point, but this idea of removing the concept of God and how it plays a part in your life, and doing that on a mass scale creates a problem, because you're going to have a worshipful tendency. It's no lie that humans are worshipful creatures. So it's going to shift to what you worship, and worship the money, worship the booty.
Yeah, do you worship
the car,
narcissism,
yourself,
hedonism,
the
materialism,
experts, Dr. Anthony Fauci,
your tribe, becomes your religion,
or even your position within the hierarchy of society, whether you're on the oppressed end or the oppressor end or the whatever. I'm a victim, and you worship that state of being, and it's like, and I'm not saying, here I'm not saying, Jesus is a solution and get God into your life. I'll save that for another time. But we need God. this higher than highest
You're right. We need
focal point to shoot at, because if we don't, then we limit it to the earthly man level, and well, man makes a terrible god.
we do. We need a sense of the sacred, and we need transcendent values that are above all of us, that we are all beholden to in order to hold our societies together. And actually, Russell has a great point coming up where he speaks on this. So we're going to forward a little bit again here. And Jordan Peterson and Russell will continue speaking on ending hatred and bigotry in this country.
Here and having just a cozy conversation. We have to take risks with one another. We have to be clear on subjects such as racism and ending bigotry and ending hatred and allowing the people the ability to express themselves individually through their identity based on that principle of Christian love and forgiveness. And I'll take a risk.
Yeah, I like that. And that's just a little aside there, but that's such an important point, because we have let the hate take over, and everyone's throwing snowflake back and forth, and much worse oftentimes. We get locked into this kind of battle. And once again, this is divide and conquer, guys. We cannot fall for this so easily. So letting them continue on, as there's where they speak directly to those transcendent values that unite us all, that all must be beholden to in order for us to maintain sane, peaceful, and healthy societies.
That have undertaken about the stories that unite us psychologically and socially, the deep stories, and the deepest stories we have that unite us are religious stories, is that, imagine this, imagine you have a choice, because you always do have a choice. So you have a choice between leaders who presume that there's no transcendent unity, there's no foundational truth, there's nothing beyond us on the ethical plane, right? So people who are tilting in the atheist direction, they're beholden to no one above themselves, or to no principle above themselves, right?
That's a really important point, isn't it?
Yeah, because without that concept, we're in a self-limiting mode. As individuals and as a collective. If there's nothing above yourself, then why aspire to be any better other than just to get the things that make you feel good?
Right, and you need something that even the leaders, the kings, the presidents are beholden to, and that's where this sense of the sacred and the higher transcendent ideal is so useful for us as a species. And regardless of which version of God or one or all or source that you believe in, we need that as human beings. This is something that we destroy and do away with at our own peril.
Well, and that in the Pledge of Allegiance, one nation under God, indivisible. The under God thing wasn't just them flouting their Christianity. They were deists. Not all of them were, good, super hardcore church-going Christians or whatever, but they realized that position that we have to have the whole country and the governors of our country under God, which keeps us indivisible.
Keeps us all in check.
Yeah, and keeps us all within the same rough framework of societal or cultural understanding.
And it also gives us that that limitless horizon of potential that Jordan Peterson goes on to speak on now, gives us something that we can always grow towards. So if these, we have a transcendent example of a highest good in people like Jesus Christ, or you can choose Buddha if you will, but having these ultimate transcendent ideals that none of us could ever possibly live up to entirely gives us infinite room to grow as a people, as individuals, and as whole societies. So we'll never reach the end of our potential improvement, which is actually really exciting. That's good. That's the kind of roadmap that we need as we move forward here, as increasingly technologically capable beings that can now destroy ourselves in any number of ways.
Well, that's always kind of how it is. You're sufficiently advanced enough, you're on the brink of becoming something much greater and more wise, or completely destroying yourself. And since we've kind of conquered animals, we've conquered the weather for the most part. Not nearly as many people are dying because it's too hot or too cold. So what do we have? We have ourselves. We are the next greatest challenge. Can we get over ourselves to say get off the planet or live a more wholesome life with the world and with each other. And you're not going to get this if you keep playing the politics of I'm just in it to win it for me and my side, and I just want to be on the winning side.
And siding with the party only because it seems to be right is, we're just signaling our virtue rather than trying to actually be virtuous. And we really focus on that here on Actuali, changing the world from the inside out. We got to be that change we wish to see, because you could have a revolution tomorrow morning, and we could put all the best people that we think should be in power, and then it's going to be corrupt all over again in a matter of weeks, because we ourselves are still corrupt. We ourselves, Congress is really a reflection of us as a people. Great quote by James Garfield, that if the Congress becomes corrupt, it's because the people have become corrupt as well. And we've let this happen to ourselves. We all have to take responsibility for the way the world is. This is adulting in the new millennium, fam. And yeah, we got more challenges facing the human species than ever at any point in human history. Yet we also have the highest and greatest potentials before us. We're in the midst of a really profound phase shift as a species. Do we make it past this fulcrum? Do we make it past this fork in the road? Which way are we going to go? Are we going to give in to that inner Satan, that evil angel on the shoulder, the egotism and the materialism, the lust for greed, and the want for hatred of those with whom you disagree? Or are we going to turn to the side of love? Eyes of fear or eyes of love, as Bill Hicks once said.
And, to be intellectually honest, there are a lot of reasons that propagandists can use for us to hate each other.
Absolutely.
But it's propaganda. We should err on the side of the, wanting to connect to other people, opposed to wanting them or wanting to not connect or have them destroyed or hate them.
As the means for finding success and peace in the world.
Yeah,
right?
Probably some smart Buddhists said this, but something along these lines. But, when somebody attacks you, your first, or attacks you or somebody you love, your first thought shouldn't necessarily be on destroying that person, but, loving that person and then destroying them. Kung Fu.
Find your center. Control your anger. Don't act out in rage, though. Yeah, because
you need to know why. Like, are they actually attacking you and your family, or you're perceiving a threat and then you're going into full fight mode? Like this whole, there's always a genocide of this or that or the other. Whether it's a genocide of the trans people or a genocide of this group, the turquoise blue furries.
And it's always a genocide that's distracting you from the real genocide, such as the chronic illness pandemic here in our own country that is killing off young children faster than any other industrialized nation. And it's because of the toxins that we allow to be in our foods that big food, of course, allows, because they want to addict us further. And Big Pharma loves the fact that they get to make money off of all these sick children. So RFK is going to speak on that coming up here. So let's let Jordan Peterson continue.
Well, what I've learned from studying what I've studied is that humanity has strived for thousands of years in the most diligent possible manner to conceptualize what should constitute the divine principle of sovereignty to which every man and woman is beholden and by whom they're judged, whether they know it or not. And that means that there's a sovereign spiritual process that even those who rule us are required to adhere to and kneel to. And if you think clearly,
Awesome.
if you think clearly about that, what you understand is that if you have a man or a woman who's leading, who's in a position of sovereign power, and there's nothing to whom they're beholden, the tendency is going to be very strong for them to regard themselves as the sole source of authority, order, and progress. And there isn't anything more dangerous and totalitarian than that. And so this realization that Russell has come to, that there has to be a divine sovereign principle under which we all operate, including the political, is in no small part a fundamental protection against the totalitarian assumption that the leader himself is God. And heaven help us, and seriously so, if we ever fall into that delusion.
Amen.
Yeah, and if you take the premise that all human interactions are a result of power relationships, and like pretty much the entirety of the left now, but the French were responsible for, I guess, realizing that. Maybe it was the French, I don't know, but the idea,
French postmodernists, I believe it
yeah,
was.
and the idea that, well, really everybody's just trying to exert power over everybody else and gain power. Well, now imagine that idea, and with no sense of the highest power, where it's like, well, I am the highest power now. I have all the power. And imagine if you will, if you are, a rebel without a cause, and you're getting into a cause, and you're starting to feel your power within the cause and moving the cause, and then you just become these evil people like we're seeing right now. Like, I'm sorry, that's how the left fell. They think it's all about power, and when they tell you stuff like how the world is and it's this racist place and black people can't do nothing for themselves because they're oppressed, and there's starving kids and wherever and all this stuff, that's what they actually believe. They believe all these things they tell you. They're saying that this is what you're doing, even though it's not the case, but they believe these things, and they want to be on top. They don't want to fix it. They want to be on top of it. They want to tell themselves all this stuff, convince themselves that they're right, and it's okay for them to be on top and use the same
and to do whatever they
techniques,
want in the name of that,
and have no accountability and responsibility. That's the one thing that scares people about religion, and particularly Christianity, is because there's inherent responsibility in it,
and a call for self-sacrifice.
Yeah, and same thing with
which
politics.
is the counter to the power dynamics.
Yeah,
Self-sacrifice on behalf of your community, your culture, your family, your loved ones, and even those you do not know.
Yeah, and it's like when you're in government, the higher you go, the more responsibility. But it seems like now it's just, well, we don't have any responsibility, no transparency, no nothing. Who are you gonna call? Not me. I don't care. I'm the God King. Leave me alone.
Not the Ghostbusters either.
Yeah, right.
All right, so now Russell's going to speak on the Goliath that lies to us in fear.
While I was listening to you, Doctor, I feared that there would be a darker consequence even than personal authority and personal autonomy assumed when there is no loving God, no loving Father, no Trinity in all perpetuity, engaged in loving unity, from which creation came. I saw Satan fall from heaven like lightning. The principle of separateness, the principle of self-centeredness, the principle of the ego, the principle of solipsism upon which this great culture is being steered towards.
Well, Russell would know.
Not community and congregation,
he was a part of it for a long time.
subsidiarity and individual authority, no, but some kind of Goliath, some beast slouches from Bethlehem to be born, some centralized creature that claims that it cares for you so much that it wants to protect your health, cares for you so much it wants you locked in your home, cares for you so much it wants you injected with medications that haven't endured proper or ethical experimentation, cares for you so much that it wants your children to eat addictive and addicting foods, cares for you so much it sees you as little more than larvae on a conveyor belt, leading you to a life of sickness and deception, surrounded by a 360 sphere of illusion, augured by those great investors in media. You'll note that George Soros just bought 300 radio stations. You'll know that Bill Gates invested $300 million in media donations in the last few years. Centralized control. We would never accept it if they came out face first and said it to us. We would oppose them then. So instead they tell us that they care. Instead they tell us that they love us. Instead they tell us that they're trying to protect the vulnerable. But today we must say to the state, to the globalist bureaucratic state, get your help off of us.
Get your help off of us. We don't want your help. It's gross.
Do not affirm, do not comply. Like that sign.
Do not.
There's
Yeah,
some
right.
great signs and costumes out there.
Dude, the one thing I noticed is just how normal. Like normal, they're all wearing slightly different stuff. There is no like group homogeneity like you see in a lot of stuff. You got guys with blue hats, guys with red hats, guys with no hats, bald guys, guys with hair.
White, black, Asian, Latino. Everybody's in that crowd. Religious, not religious. People are in that crowd. Left, right. Up, down, across the spectrum.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So cool. It was
But,
so
well,
cool.
you know,
And I'm glad that it's making big rounds on the internet now, so people can see what happened, because they did a really good job of shadow banning the marketing behind this event.
yeah.
You know, I'm guessing there's maybe 10 to 20,000 people there, maybe more. Throughout the day, people were kind of coming and going, and at some points, of course, because it was a long, 7-hour plus event. But you know, it could have been easily 100,000 or more had it gotten had the marketing actually been able to do its rounds.
Well, this is the first. Let's hope that they can continue to go on, or it can fracture off into.
Well, that's it. That's it.
off
Now we
into-
grow it, right?
Yeah. Like the slime mold.
So we take this inspiration to find unity amidst even our differences, and find those fundamental values that do unite us. And you know, that's very much what this whole event was about: protecting free speech, saving the health of our people, our children, and creating an alliance that can stop the takeover of our government by multinational corporate interests, because that should be the real focal point of our attention here. So now we're gonna take one more clip from these two and hear them talk about their
wait.
unlikely alliance.
If corporations are people under the law, you know how they did that?
Yeah.
Couldn't we charge them for mass murder?
They probably would just get a slap on the wrist fine.
Or child abuse with, you know, all the chemicals they're putting in the food that's, well, they'd probably say that, oh, well, the family's feeding it to them. It's
Well,
like,
if
yeah,
we can
but
get RFK in office under Trump's administration, we might actually be able to do something.
And just
He's
say-
one of the only people that's ever successfully sued any of these multinationals. He did successfully sue
Yeah.
Monsanto to the tune of billions for small family farmers who were getting cancer from Roundup, watered down Agent Orange that it is.
yeah, and so just so people know, states in some legal things can be considered people, but what they actually are not states.
Citizens United. I believe it
No,
was.
corporations are people, whatever,
Supposedly,
but they're
yeah,
actually states. They are a decision-making mechanism that has many parts, much like, say, our state, you know, the United States as a state. You have a bunch of people
point.
it's supposed to represent. Those are the shareholders within the company, and then the shareholders collectively make decisions for what this state is going to. So we're actually battling with very rich states,
Yes.
not just
Yes. States.
a company. It's a state. If
States that have more power than whole nations at this point.
yeah, and if you're openly traded, you're a state. Like if your company is openly traded, it's a state.
And once these corporations get into coalitions like the WEF, they do indeed have enough power to bend the will of any government that they
Well,
want.
the WEF's just the UN for corporate power. You know, that's
So let's jump back on over here now. Jordan Peterson and Russell Brand.
But the truth is that once again we are here in collaboration and alliance as unlikely partners, but partners nevertheless. Partners come here to communicate a mutual message, and I think that what you said then is most significant. That I suppose I am an apostate. I formerly belonged to the culture of Hollywood. I've been in their movies, and I remember. I would sometimes wear a hat. I'd usually play a rock star. You remember it. And I've experienced at depth and at length the treasures of the culture that are offered: hedonism, excitement, pleasure, distraction. And like any addict, and I know there'll be people out there that suffer from and are in recovery from addiction, and those of you that are will know that recovery is only possible when you accept a spiritual solution, when you become willing to interrogate and examine what you have become and what you've become attached to. And it seems to me that it's not an accident that our culture is predicated upon consuming, upon selfishness, upon distraction, upon mundanity and banality for the individual. A total lack of privacy for the individual, but maximum privacy for the state. A requirement for transparency from individuals, but no transparency from the state. Accountability, lawfare, justice, media, the institutions of your country, all turned against the individual, all utilized for absolute control. Of course, this kind of control would never be accepted if it were visible. It's only through constant escalating crisis, through the elevation of fear and the stimulation of desire, like rats in laboratories, are stimulated into distraction and compliance.
That's it, man. And aren't you guys tired of being distracted, being pulled around by our baser instincts with these artificial fillers that never quite fill the void within us? Because there is something true and good that awaits us out there when we come together in love rather than allowing ourselves to be divided in this way. Now we're going to move on to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., guys. Nephew of course, our assassinated President John F. Kennedy. An incredible figure. Of course, this guy has been so destroyed by mainstream media. People have a, unfortunately, very inaccurate view of him, but character assassination is the way of the day.
And, you know, he probably was a pretty fun, wild guy to hang out with. And, you know, they're like, well, he got the what is it, the carcasses of like a bear or the whale thing. It's like, well, if you watch his podcast, he's got all different skulls and other stuff like that. He's, you know, he hunts, he does stuff like that. And I mean,
everyone's made a mistake in their life, but that was a stupid one for them to try and find. They had to find something on him because the guy's done so much incredible work in his life. But let's not distract ourselves.
Yeah,
with any of that. Let's actually hear the man speak for himself, because that's the thing that people just don't get to do enough. And so we hope that we're aiding in this way. If you guys enjoy what's happening here, by the way, make sure that you like and subscribe, because there's going to be so much more of this kind of content coming forth. Let's go on over to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. now.
During COVID, we saw the greatest attack on America's liberties and our constitutional right, and at any time in American history. We saw by February of 2020, they were already censoring doctors, scientists, individuals, anybody who questioned the government orthodoxy. The American press, the guardians of the free speech, of the First Amendment, of our democracy, all took part in this unprecedented effort to silence dissent in our country. The press, which is supposed to function to speak truth to power, instead began silencing the powerless and acting as a bullhorn for government orthodoxies. And as soon as they figured out that they could censor us and that we were going to put up with it, they began an assault against all of our other Bill of Rights. Hamilton, Adams, and Madison said that we put freedom of expression in the First Amendment because all of the other rights are dependent on it. A government that has the capacity to silence its critics has license for any atrocity.
Right. That's right. A government that has power to silence its critics has the power to commit any atrocity. And the pillars of liberty and freedom that were just completely thrown to the side during COVID have left us in a very dangerous place. We wrote the Constitution for hard times, not for easy times. And you know what? I totally forgot to transition us on that part, so I don't know if you guys could hear all that.
Oh, the first
yeah, you could hear it. You were just watching us. Let's let him go on a little bit more, though.
Amendment was the most important right. And now, as soon as they figured out that we were going to put up with them silencing dissent, they began their attack against all of our other Bill of Rights. There's three legs in the First Amendment. The first is freedom of speech. The second is freedom of worship. Yeah. They closed every church in this country for a year. With no scientific citation, no public hearing, no notice and comment rulemaking, no environmental impact statement. all of the protections and the safeguards of democracy. And I've been litigating for 40 years against companies and governments when they try to skirt those requirements. Suddenly, they all just disappeared.
That's right. An entire year they closed the churches down in this country.
And one bureaucrat who'd been there for 50 years, you know who I'm talking about?
His name Brandon?
Yeah, that's the guy.
He just said, close the churches. And that was it.
I don't know.
And they went after the third leg of the First Amendment, which is freedom of assembly. They told us, again, with no scientific citation, we have to social distance from each other. We can't assemble. We can't petition and protest in groups. And
unless it was
nobody
for
had ever done that
racial
before.
equity.
Again, there was no hearing, none of the safeguards of democracy. Then they went after Fifth Amendment property rights. They closed 3.3 million businesses in this country.
Yep, small businesses.
With no due process and no just compensation.
That's where all those jobs went.
And the businesses that were left, they closed all the churches, but they left the liquor stores open.
Yeah.
They closed the little businesses, but they left Walmart open and Facebook and Amazon and all the big tech companies that were profiting from the pandemic and from all these closures. They then went after the Fourth Amendment prohibitions against unwarranted searches and seizures. With all this track and trace requirements that we had to leave our homes, to go into a building, to transport ourselves to any other jurisdiction, to take an airplane. We had to show our private medical records. They waived HIPAA. They made us disclose our private medical records to have virtually anybody who asked. They turned us into a tyranny. They told us to strap on masks, again, with no science behind it. And that only the worst tyrannies in the world, people like the Taliban, like the Iranian government, the Saudi government, these are the ones that force their citizens to wear masks.
Good point.
Because it dehumanizes them. It turns them from spiritual, creative, independent human beings
The babies
into a
that
faceless
grew up then
mass
didn't learn how to read faces.
of compliance and obedience.
That's right.
Language skills were stunted.
And then they went after the Seventh Amendment, which guarantees jury trials to Americans. And here's what the Seventh Amendment says.
Yeah, this is
No American shall be denied the right of a trial before a jury of his peers in cases or controversies exceeding $25. That's all it says. There is no pandemic exception. And the framers of the Constitution knew all about epidemics. There were two epidemics during the Revolutionary War, a malaria epidemic that decimated the armies of Virginia, a smallpox epidemic that decimated the armies of New England. Between the end of the Revolution and the signing of the Bill of Rights in 1792, there were epidemics in every city in our country: cholera, yellow fever, typhus, typhoid, malaria, that killed tens of thousands of Americans. Everybody knew about this, and yet they did not put an epidemic exception in the United States Constitution. They wrote the Constitution for hard times, not for easy times.
That's it. Wrote it for hard times, not for easy times. These pillars of liberty and freedom are absolutely essential, and they are what safeguard our system of self-governance by, of, and for the people as it was intended. Of course, we're not perfect. We're still a work in progress, and we are always going to be improving on the American dream. It is a dream that is to be ever realized. And just because we haven't been perfect, doesn't mean that we should dismantle the whole thing and throw the baby out with the bathwater. That baby might actually be important to keep around. It is life. it is truth. And we're the best thing that humans ever came up with on this planet, as imperfect as we are. We created something that's open-ended that can continually self-improve and continue to grow. So we're going to move on a little bit now and allow RFK to speak on how more speech is the remedy for bad speech, not less.
Wrote the
like that Canadian-American flag in the background there.
Dude, there's the one guy that's by our screen down there with the
They
goatee.
wrote the First
He was
Amendment
tripping his brains out, dude.
not to protect the kind of speech that everybody wants to hear that doesn't offend anybody.
Just like,
They wrote it to protect the kind of speech that offends people.
that's right.
And we don't want to hear.
Hammer these things out together. A lot of
In
Canadian fans here.
America,
Hospital
Our whole system
protocol
of government,
kill.
which is rooted in the First Amendment, is based on this confidence. And when ideas are allowed to triumph in the marketplace of debate, and we will have a better country, we will have more freedom, and we will have a better government in the long run.
That's how you beat bad ideas, is by allowing for debate and allowing ideas to compete in that marketplace of debate and dialogue.
But if you know your ideas are bad, you need other people from bringing in better ideas, so
Yeah.
what'd he say? Shut him up.
Yeah, we want this debate in the middle of the town square, in front of everybody, so those bad ideas can be called out and the arguments for them actually effectively countered, so that people understand why something is actually bad and not ideal. You can't just sweep these things under the rug and hide them because they might potentially offend somebody. We got to remember that we have a choice in how we react to whatever happens in this life. We are not, of course, we're going to be sometimes immediately impacted by something particularly offensive, but we really do have this thing called self-control. We get to choose, in fact, how we feel emotionally about anything. We can let that rage go at any moment and see people as ourselves once again. So, man, this gets intense as RFK moves on here, because now he talks about the rapid drop in childhood IQ due to the
Shutting down of the
shutting down
schools.
during the pandemic.
And also, I'm looking at you, teachers union. You were the ones that were so loud about, well, we can't go back to school. Like, think about the teachers. We're going to get
Well, they were lied to. They were conditioned. They were very effectively lied to.
Yeah, okay, I get that. I get that. But, it's like sacrificing their primary charges for,
Well, they were manipulated emotionally, and people were in a state of distress, and it's very easy to manipulate people, especially after you lock them up for 2 months straight and you put them in a state of constant fear, and you cut them off from other people. It's very easily easy to brainwash
I feel it
people.
as if the union bosses knew really what was going on, and
Some of them probably did. Some of them may have, but that's neither here nor there. But it is unfortunate that our teachers' unions were fooled into supporting this measure. Let's hear why. So, jump ahead a couple minutes here, guys. Get us to where we need. All right, let's go.
And you look at that pandemic, you look at the management, the disaster. The Brown University, they closed all the schools. The Brown University study said our children, our toddlers in this country lost 22 IQ points. A third of children are now going to be taking remedial education, and many believe they will never recover. The GMAC scores are down. All the scoring of IQ and our children's intelligence are down. This did a terrible, terrible blow to our country. And what was the point of it all? Well, we look at what the outcome was. And the outcome was that they shifted. They closed all of the small business in this country. 41% of black-owned businesses will never reopen.
Wow.
They shifted money upward. They strengthened these big tech institutions like Amazon and Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and Google. And they weakened Main Street and small business and the American worker, and they shifted $4.3 trillion from the American middle class to this new oligarchy of billionaires, which is the biggest outcome, the biggest shift in world history of wealth.
During the
And they shifted power. We gave our government all these new powers. And I want you all to remember three things, three rules. One is that when you give a government a power, it will never voluntarily relinquish it.
Right.
Second rule, that if you give a government a power, it will ultimately abuse that power to the maximum extent possible.
Absolutely.
And the third rule is that nobody ever complied their way out of totalitarianism.
No. True story, RFK. Yeah, the greatest transfer of wealth in history occurred during COVID. 40% of black businesses, small businesses, will never reopen.
Yeah, and, people in power now have the gall to be like, well, we have solutions, and, we need to just make more houses and give people money and just throw more money at it and throw more money at it. It's like,
so further inflate the
So
currency, increase housing prices further.
you're bleeding us even further and then showering us with our own blood, and we're supposed to thank you
Yeah,
for
you don't
it.
think that people are going to raise their house pricing? Real brokers and real
Well,
estate agencies are
and-
not going
well,
to
one
raise
of the reasons
prices
why
as
new
a result.
houses are so expensive is like has anybody taken a look at the price of lumber or siding
Oh my
or
God.
concrete or even just the gravel to put, not even a paved driveway, just a gravel driveway? Stuff's really expensive, and it's about to get worse with the dock workers going on strike too, man. It's like this country's falling apart. We need to come together,
Amen.
And,
So
and we've got Canadians and Englishmen and stuff talking about this, coming down here to
because
talk
they
about
see it
'cause-
happening here. If it happens here in the States, if the authoritarian oligarchs are able to gain full control here in the U.S., then the rest of the world will follow suit very quickly, and we'll find ourselves on Planet Walmart.
Well, what is it that John Kerry said while he was at the WEF? The First Amendment's really getting in the way of being able to get their plans forward. Because it basically it's getting in their way of wanting to squash all misinformation and disinformation
And malinformation.
and malinformation.
Bad information that's true, but they don't like it. That's another one. That's an actual term now.
Yeah, well,
So let's let RFK finish out here. Awesome.
We enriched all of these corporations and their captive agencies, and now want to go and commoditize all of the things we value in our lives. They're commoditized the Constitution. They have turned the courts into servants for authority instead of the servants of the people. They've commoditized the press and turned the press away from the First Amendment and into propagandists. They're commoditizing our landscapes. They're commoditizing our health. And they're commoditizing our children. And the biggest beneficiary of the pandemic was, of course, the pharmaceutical cartel. And if you're a part of Big Pharma, the most valuable asset in this country today is a sick child.
That
so I want to show you how crazy it is when he's talking about Big Pharma. The Big Pharma lobbyists give more than defense, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and all that stuff. So it's like you have Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America, $29 million in approximate lobbying. Pfizer, $20 million. AbbVie, $16 million.
I
Merck,
can't see that
$13 million.
sidebar that you have up, but that's really.
Oh
good
no,
stuff.
no,
Yeah.
I'm looking at this over here.
Something else. Okay.
Yeah. So Oh, basically, yeah, that's spending. So
So yeah, this is our spending right now, and
yeah,
if
yeah,
we change
go
it
to
to
dollars
dollars and go
and
to agency, the Department of Health and Human Services 1.62 trillion a year.
and well, this year to date. So we're not done
This
yet.
year to date.
Yeah,
Okay.
4 year to date.
Okay. And so we're looking at how our healthcare takes up about 27% of our GDP just so far this year. Look at our national defense. We actually doubled it.
You know, yeah,
Like
the
health
warmongers.
plus Medicare.
You think the warmongers are bad? The pill mongers are even worse.
Yeah, they are.
And so, you know, like the lobbyists, they put in a pittance compared to what they get back. You know, and we're talking about, you know, like I'm looking at these numbers, I'm like, wow, man, 20 million seems low comparative to like what they're getting back. But Pfizer, they lobby at roughly 20 million.
Dozens of lobbyists per
Lockheed Martin is 15 million.
congressperson.
And you know, you go down to the chemical industry, they're, you know, American Chemistry Council, 10 million.
BASF,
you
Dow
know,
Chemical, DuPont,
Yeah.
all contributing millions and millions. And oftentimes these guys will contribute to both sides, and that's why
Oh,
we
yeah,
have
yeah,
neocons
yeah.
and neoliberals. We have corrupt, controlled little puppet representatives these days that certainly are not representing us. They are
But yeah,
representing
that's-
financial interests. And
but-
this was something that our forefathers warned us about, the acquisition of one unwarranted power by financial interests, challenging our government in a trial of strength. Andrew Jackson spoke of this. Thomas Paine warned us all the way back in his time and during the founding of the Union, and he said that there are men who get their living by war is as shocking as it is true, but it becomes all the more unpardonable when those men seek to sow discord amongst nations to further enrich their profits. So weapons profiteering, the business of war, and those that seek to further enrich themselves by it has been a problem for governments ever since our founding. And it continues to be a serious issue, as Dwight D. Eisenhower warned us, and now Tulsi again at this event. That's when I knew Tulsi was legit, too. I saw her on the Joe Rogan podcast, and she started to speak openly about the military-industrial complex and actually brought up Dwight D. Eisenhower's farewell address when his presidency ended, when he gave that speech. And I was like, oh, yeah, you don't say that unless you are willing to get yourself assassinated. Good for you.
And if you can bring up that chart again, the fiscal
let's
data
go
chart,
ahead and look at that again.
and go to category. I want people to see how much they spend on community and regional development, transportation, and education versus Social Security, Medicare, and health.
Wow, good point.
It's tiny, absolutely tiny.
It is.
No wonder trains are crashing and poisonous chemicals are going over the place, and like
Oh, yeah.
our biggest, most glorious cities are turning into crap holes.
So 1% was spent on community and regional development, 2% on transportation, 5% on education, but that also includes training, employment, and social services. And then you look up at our Medicare, our health, and national defense, and I can't believe we're spending more on healthcare than we are on national defense. No, that's insane. That's how sick we are, culture, or as a people.
Yeah,
We are now the sickest industrialized nation on the planet. How? How does that happen here in the United States?
You know, the tobacco companies got a hold of the food companies and used what they learned about how to sell tobacco to people and make it super addictive, and did it with the food.
Yeah, they did.
Those Cheerios, they, nicotine free, non-addictive. Yeah, okay.
So let's hear from Jimmy Dore now, comedian, podcast host, former member of the Young Turks that left when they went too far radical left for him, and he himself is an avowed progressive like Russell Brand. This is going to be fun. Check this out, guys.
I don't have much time to talk, but what I want to make
let me slow the man down. I was watching this fast earlier. Back a little.
I don't have much time to talk, but what I want to make what's the most important thing is that we have to stop listening to the corporate media. The corporate media works for the international billionaire elites who want us fighting each other and blaming each other for everything that's wrong instead of keeping our eyes on them. I fell for the propaganda around COVID. I was convinced if I got COVID, I was going to die. I was the first one in. I did everything. I locked down. I wiped down. I wore a mask. I didn't wear a mask in the car alone. I wasn't that guy. Whenever I see those people, I want to go, do you wear a seatbelt when you're watching television? But I was the first in line to get the vax, and I was like, hey, since I'm the first one, is the vaccine safe? And they go, yeah, it's safe.
How do you know?
I was like, well, can I see the vaccine trial data? And they go, we're not going to release that for 75 years.
That's true. I love how he folds all this into like a stand-up act, but everything he's saying here is actually true.
Oh, the 18 mice that they tested on? And then,
we're not going to see the results of those for 75 years.
And then how Pfizer lied about the efficacy and dangers of their vaccine. No trouble. No, and okay,
yeah. Let's let him go on. This is so good what he says here. Bring him back a little.
Is the vaccine safe? And they go, yeah, it's safe. I was like, well, can I see the vaccine trial data? And they go, we're not going to release that for 75 years. I was like, oh, did Pfizer kill Kennedy? So I got the vax, and I was like, hey, I'm going to go home. They go, you can't go home. You have to stay here for 15 minutes in case you die.
Yeah, I remember doing that.
I was like, you sons of bitches.
It's safe.
You told me it was safe. They go, it is safe. What are you, anti-vax? I just got the vax, fuckface. They go, you have to stay here for 15 minutes in case you die. 15 minutes in case. I go, if my heart explodes, because that's what they said. They go, we have to monitor you for 15 minutes in case your heart explodes. Hey, if my heart explodes, I'm going to sue the shit out of everybody. They said you can't sue if your heart explodes because they passed the law saying you can't sue if you get injured by the vax.
True.
I was like, why would they pass a law like that? They go, because it's safe.
It's safe.
And I'm not saying that the COVID-19 vaccine doesn't work. All I'm saying is everybody I know who got the COVID-19 vaccine then got COVID.
Yeah.
Is that how vaccines work now?
Remember how they told us that you were absolutely not going to get it if you took it? Biden said that. So many talk show TV reporters said that.
Everybody said it, and then
Fauci said
when it broke down, they're like, "Well, it'll lessen your ability to get it." And then when that was proving that's not the case, he'd be like, "Oh, well, it'll lessen your response to it." And when that turned out it wasn't the case, it just started shutting up.
They basically just continued to defame and mischaracterize people for not.
Well,
getting
dude,
it.
and I ran across Dr. John Campbell. He had a new episode,
great,
and
man.
he was talking with
look him up, guys.
a guy who did a study on, the blood clots and all that stuff, and actually created like an app where people can go, or one of those codes, the little box codes that sends you to
QR code,
a QR code that sends you to a place where you can register that you've had it or somebody you know has had it and all this stuff. And yeah, it's I'm not go check out Dr. John Campbell and go check out that episode. They'll explain it to you, but it's disturbing.
Yeah, shout out to John
these
Campbell.
These are clots in your body that, and long nasty ones, or what do they call it? Grape jelly clots, or dirty blood, where you have micro clots all through your blood.
Not to
so
mention
it looks like
myocarditis.
coffee grinds.
Yeah, heart attacks in young men.
Yep.
Athletes, healthy people that should never be having these kinds of events.
If we would have talked about this a year or two ago, we would have been scrubbed. They would have kicked us off of it already.
At this very moment, I'm still a little bit worried about us getting a strike, considering what we're covering in this episode. We've already gotten one strike, and look at how big this channel is. Like, we're tiny, and they're even coming after us. Yeah, we did an episode on RFK's interview with Tucker Carlson, and they talked about election inconsistencies, let's say. And I think that might be what got that one struck down. We already have one strike on our channel, guys. Help us out here. Like and subscribe. Share it with your friends, your family, whoever you think would appreciate what's happening over here on Actuali. Let's jump back over to Jimmy now.
Could you imagine if we all got the polio vaccine and in the same year we all got polio?
Yeah, right.
I'd be like, hey, I don't think that polio vaccine works. Why do you say that, Jim? I got fucking polio. But then there's always some asshole. Well, it's not supposed to stop you from getting it. It's just supposed to lessen your symptoms.
Oh, yeah,
oh,
yeah.
well, then I guess it worked. I guess it worked. Look at me. I'm a success story over here. Put me on the poster for the facts. Yeah.
For the listeners, he was walking around like
Anyway.
a cripple.
We got to stop listening to the media. All they do is divide us, no matter what the story is. You know, journalists
right.
used to come from blue-collar backgrounds, and they weren't looking to make friends with the elite. They were looking to make the life uncomfortable for the elite.
That's right, man. I remember all the movies that were out, like the one about the Watergate scandal. That was a great movie. We used to pride ourselves, or at least appreciate and honor journalists who worked hard to be as objective as possible. That is, of course, what the fourth estate is there for. That's why we call journalism the fourth estate. It's like a fourth branch of government almost that protects us from government. So yeah, journalists should be challenging power, not defending the power centers. They should be questioning them.
Well, now billionaires own the media like Jeff Bezos,
right.
and the journalists come from Ivy League institutions and Ivy League schools, and they choose them to cover the news because they know they're going to be class loyal. And man, are they. No matter what it is, they report it in a way that divides the country. It could be climate change. It could be January 6th. It could be Black Lives Matter or Kyle Rittenhouse. Now, I hated Kyle Rittenhouse because the media told me he was a white supremacist who didn't live in that community. He traveled across state lines with guns, and he shot 3 black people. And I hated him, and then I watched the trial, and it turns out he did live in that community. He was a lifeguard in that community. He didn't travel across state lines with guns, and he didn't shoot 3 black people. He shot 3 white people, and I was like, that's different.
That's different.
And one of them being Rosenbaum, who was just let out for molesting boys actually sodomizing them. So and at that time old what's his name, the Kenosha kid was talking about him. Anyway, he was underage. Rittenhouse.
Kyle Rittenhouse.
And then the other 2 guys were complete radical scumbags that abused people around them all the time anyway, so it's like they lied to you. And actually, what they didn't show you is him running around trying to offer medical help to people who were getting even the protesters who were getting sprayed in the eye with tear gas and stuff like that. He was helping them. He had a med kit.
Yeah, kid obviously wasn't trying and wanting to use his gun. He had it there for protection. And then once he was being mercilessly and viciously attacked, he did defend himself.
Yep. And only and shot exactly the people that were coming after him. So he actually had better gun control than you see on a lot of people too. But the media
in a state
lies.
of panic, which is
which is crazy, right?
Which is crazy.
And there were shots fired before he shot too.
Yeah, let's hear about January 6th now, Jimmy Dore.
Shit. They told me all those people on January 6th were trying to overthrow the government. Really? A bunch of Second Amendment gun nuts showed up at the Capitol to overthrow the government, and son of a bitch, they forgot their guns.
Got their guns.
Oh, jeez.
Gosh darn it.
Boy, I bet they were embarrassed. Mike, you got the guns? I brought mittens.
It was a cold day.
They weren't trying to overthrow the government. Really? A bunch of guys in pajama bottoms and buffalo helmets stealing a podium? I'm overthrowing the government.
Yeah.
They were just pissed off protesters, and half of them got let in by the cops who took the fence away, and the other half got pushed in by the FBI plants in the crowd.
Yep.
And I know it
Yes.
because I saw it on TV.
Yep.
There
And the
were FBI plans.
and the
in that
FBI
crowd.
won't admit how many that they had in there.
No, but there were definitely plans.
Those what part of
as
the-
they often had. They have been doing this for a long time. They put agent provocateurs in the crowd to oftentimes try and incite riots so that they can then have an excuse to arrest all the people. They did this at World Trade Order protest during the famous Battle for Seattle event that occurred out there in Washington State, freaking 30 years ago or so.
Dude,
30 years ago.
I remember watching, speaking of the FBI guys in January 6th, I remember watching, because it was live broadcast by people, live streaming it. And there's these dudes in, whatever their gears. They had their plate carriers on and all this stuff, and they were covered up and they had their faces covered up, and they had what looked like Nancy Pelosi's missing laptop, and they were running downstairs and they're like, "We're not here to be Antifa. We're not here to be Antifa," while they're getting out because, well, there was patriots that were pissed off that people were like breaking and stealing stuff. I remember watching
people
that.
thought that they could go to the Capitol and protest, and the ones that started to actually did riot that were, coaxed into it by the provocateurs, because there's actual footage of people where one guy's like, "Let's storm, let's get inside, let's break in," and other people are like, "What? No, what the hell are you saying?" But some unfortunate souls were actually wrapped up and taken in by that.
God, what's his name? It's the guy who'll never see charges, though, even though he instigated like the whole thing the day
There's
before
a lot of footage
and
and
during
photos
the
of
day.
this guy. Yeah, that was clearly an FBI agent, and we now know he was for a fact.
Yeah, I wish I could remember the dude's name.
Yeah, it's what it is. We can do an episode on that sometime too.
Yeah, and really get kicked off the interweb.
Well, what do you do?
Yeah, just keep doing it, man.
Yeah, amen to that. We ain't stopping. Let's go. Let him finish out this little here.
Cops swinging the doors wide open, taking selfies with the protesters makes you think that it was a setup. They did everything except erect a bouncy house inside the Capitol.
Yeah, right.
And they didn't even know what they were doing when they got in there. They went to Nancy. They were like, "What do we do? Let's go to Nancy Pelosi's office and take a shit." That's not a coup. That's a poo.
Yeah, the gunless coup.
But there were pipe bombs, but we have footage of distance of the person with the pipe bomb, but mysteriously the pipe bombs, where the pipe bombs were placed as they were being placed, the cameras panned away, or they don't have the images for that. And that was at what was the DNC and then one other place.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We never heard anything in the news about that major demonstration that occurred outside of the White House where several cops were injured. And that was
during Trump's. Wow. Yeah. Okay, which one though? They've done it recently.
Multiple times. There's one recently. Yeah.
But during Trump's era, they burnt down a building in the White House and were storming it, and the media was laughing. They were like, "Oh yeah, bunker boy," because they had to take the sitting president and bring him down into the bunker because it was potentially not
that's
safe.
Okay because he's an existential threat to democracy.
Yeah, he's a fascist. He's
everything
Hitler.
That they
he's
say
Hitler.
About the other side in today's corporate-owned and operated Democratic Party is actually what they are guilty of. It's all projection.
Hey man, they teach you how to do it in Rules for Radicals. That book, what was it, Zen, or was that anyway?
Howard Zinn, maybe? I don't
know.
Well,
he one of their Bible, the leftist
in a lot
Bibles.
of ways, but let's see the last little bit of what we have here from Jimmy Dore before we go on. I love this last little bit. Go ahead, Jimmy.
The only thing that scares the establishment is what's happening at this rally here today. People from the left and the right coming together to realize we have more in common that divides us, and we share a common enemy. And that common enemy is the oligarchy who did a controlled demolition of our economy during COVID. Yep. And they want me to hate my neighbor for all the pain I'm feeling because he wouldn't take a vaccine that didn't work the way they said it did in the first fucking place.
Yeah. Word.
Good, Jimmy.
Well, I'm not going to hate my neighbor. I'm going to love my neighbor because they're hurting just like me, and I'm going to join to overthrow those cocksucking oligarchs because that's the only thing that's going to work.
Yep.
And if everybody on the right, because just realize not everybody on the left likes Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and Demented Joe. We just want to end those wars, invest that money back in America, and have health care that doesn't bankrupt us. And if you could figure that out, it would go a long way. And if everybody on the left could realize that everybody on the right is a white supremacist Nazi gun nut, they're just fucking gun nuts. And I love them, and I love you too. Stay together. Fuck the media. Fuck the media.
Yeah, fuck them. Yeah, F the media for real though.
That was awesome. So that's Jimmy Dore. Another great channel here on YouTube. He does such good reporting for a comedian. This guy does a great job. He always has great guests, and he's quite the seasoned political commentator.
And to be completely 100% honest, I'm not the biggest fan of his, but I still appreciate his honesty.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't agree with most of the stuff I hear on his show, but that's fine because he's honest about it and he talks honestly with the people he has on his show. So that's all you can ask for, right? If you can't agree, at least be honest.
That's right. That's right. So, and this is, an unlikely coalition. And we're going to, of course, going to have points of disagreement as to how we're going to address certain issues, but we certainly can at least come to some kind of consensus around what those issues are that we need to address together. And at the top of that, of course, is freedom of speech and the right to assemble and the right to actually have good and healthy food for ourselves and our children. But speaking of censorship and free speech, now we're going to look at Brandon Straka, who started the walkaway movement. And the movement that the walking away is actually from the Democratic Party due to how corrupted it has become by financial interests. This is an incredible movement, and it's an incredible story that Brandon shares with us here. I mean, this just blew me away. I did not know this guy's whole story, and he tells it here after this short little intro. Let's go ahead and hear from Brandon now. Brandon Straka, ladies and gentlemen. Check out the walkaway movement.
6.5 years ago, I made a decision to walk away from the Democratic Party. I voted for Hillary Clinton, for Christ's sake.
My bad, guys. I got that one going really fast, too. So,
yeah, I didn't even notice. I listened to everything at 2 times speed. I'm like, oh, great. Yeah. Hey.
All right, here we go.
Years ago, I made a decision to walk away from the Democratic Party. I voted for Hillary Clinton, for Christ's sake. After voting for Barack Obama twice. Yeah, okay. When Donald Trump got elected, I was in tears and I was terrified. And the reason why is because I believed the mainstream media and all of the lies that they were telling me about Donald Trump and about his supporters. I believed CNN. I believed MSNBC. I believed the New York Times. I believed all of these lying fools. And I had to do a deep dive and do a lot of research to understand really 2 questions. Why would anyone vote for a man as awful as the mainstream media has been telling me that Donald Trump is? And does the mainstream media lie? How did they get the election so wrong when they kept telling me that Hillary Clinton was going to win in a landslide? And for about 2 straight months, I got buried in research, watching videos, reading stories, learning, researching. And when I came out the other side, you know what I realized? Donald Trump is not my enemy. The media that I've been trusting my entire life is my enemy.
Yep.
Sad but true.
As Trump said, enemy of the people.
Of all of the American people, they are the enemy of truth. They are the enemy of any of us who want to see our country united. Because the Democrats can only succeed when they divide us and keep people divided by fear. This is what they do to minorities in this country. That's why I started the walkaway movement.
And if you have trouble believing any of this, guys, just wait. Hear his story. It's coming up.
At this point, we have grown to over 500,000 people who have shared their stories in walkaway, videos and written testimonials sharing why they're walking away from the Democratic Party, and we're just getting started.
That's right. I'm going to zoom ahead just a little bit here, and let's hear his story.
My story, I think probably more than any other story that you've heard on stage today, I think really exemplifies what is at risk and what is at stake here, what we are up against. Because from the day that I started Walkaway, I started being targeted by the mainstream media. I started being targeted by people in our government. But it wasn't until I showed up on January 6th to stand up for the American voter that my life really began to get torn to shreds. I was a scheduled speaker at a permitted event on Capitol grounds, and I went to the Capitol on January 6th. I did not enter the building on January 6th, never went inside. I did not witness any violence, vandalism, theft, or destruction. I stood outside of the building for 8 minutes shooting a video, which I then uploaded to Twitter. And 2.5 weeks later, my home was raided by a team of FBI agents in tactical gear who got me out of bed at dawn, put me in handcuffs, and took me to jail.
Unreal, dude.
When I got out of 24-hour lockdown in jail, I was told that I was facing multiple felony charges for what I had done on January 6th. And needless to say, after going through an over year-long criminal case with the
multiple felony charges.
Yeah.
For doing nothing.
Yeah.
We'll get back to this, guys. There's a little more.
It's absolutely nuts. And after the whole spiel, I want to actually read you what he pleaded for and what they got him with.
Awesome. Yeah, that'd be great to hear.
And also I want to read. I guess this is the prosecutor's statements. But
Okay.
Like official. These are official, actual court documents from the Justice Department.
Mm-hmm.
Probably not going to bring them up on screen because it's.
I have them ready if we need to.
Yeah, I
So
can read them out just fine. But
Right on.
yeah. So
Okay. So yeah, we'll get back over to that here shortly then.
let the brother man cook.
Yeah, let's let the man keep on cooking because he is cooking.
The federal government, who threatened to add more felonies if I went to trial. I took a plea deal and pled guilty to a Class B misdemeanor for disorderly conduct for standing outside of the Capitol for 8 minutes, nonviolently shooting a video. Now, that might sound like a
At
happy
an event that he was booked to speak at,
ending to you, until you learn that even
and he never went inside.
misdemeanor charges connected with January 6th are being treated as acts of terrorism by our government. I've
Even
been
with
placed on a
misdemeanor
terrorism watch list. I have been permanently banned
Put on a terrorist watch list, permanently banned, and listen to this.
by PayPal, Venmo, Stripe, Patreon, Constant Contact, Bank.
He has been
by our
debanked. Let's
misdemeanor
hear that
charges connected with January 6th are being treated as acts of terrorism by our government.
Even misdemeanor
I've
charges.
been placed on a terrorism watch list. I have been permanently banned by PayPal, Venmo, Stripe, Patreon, Constant Contact, banks, email services, payment platforms. Just like in China, where you get a social credit score, and if the government decides that you're not a worthy or good enough person, they'll prevent you from being able to travel or send or receive money or exist in society. This has already happened to me. So if you hear people talk about the country going down a road toward communism, socialism, Marxism, and you think that sounds hyperbolic, it's already happened to many of us in this country, and I am one of them. And I hope that my story will wake a lot of people up so that you can see. You don't even have to have committed a crime for these people to come after you. You just have to be a threat to the establishment.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. So that's Brandon Straka of the Walk Away movement. Look him up. Follow him on social media. I'm not sure if he's still on Facebook and Instagram at this point, but
Yeah,
he's
he's
certainly
pretty
gonna
much
be
been
on X
banned
at
everywhere,
least. Yeah.
except where he can go on podcasts and other stuff like that.
They might have allowed him back at this point, but man,
Yeah.
like to have your PayPal and your Venmo and to be banned from banking, like to be debanked in this way, this is truly Orwellian. This
So-
is scary stuff. So this is why people are complaining about Marxism, socialism, communism in this country, because these kinds of authoritarian moves are indeed happening, and people are getting shut up left and right, censored, blacklisted, shadow banned, delisted, so on and so forth.
Dude, well, if it
Doxed.
If it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's probably a freaking duck. So whether you want to call it like completely
Yeah,
well, that's not actually
And this is
communism.
a guy. This is a guy that voted for Hillary. This
Oh,
is
yeah.
a guy that voted for Obama twice. This was a lifelong Democrat, just like RFK Jr.'s whole family, lifelong Democrats. Tulsi Gabbard, lifelong Democrat.
So he was sentenced to 36 months of probation, including 3 months of home detention and $5,000 fine and $500 in restitution. Restitution, I believe, is legal fees. Your client, so charges and statutory penalties. Your client agrees to plead guilty to count one of the information. Oh wait,
I don't know.
okay, sorry, I have different things up. Yeah, so basically, information changing your client with charging your client with engaging in disorderly and disruptive conduct in the Capitol building or grounds in violation of Title 40 United States Code Section 5104E2D, which I will read for you in a moment. Oh yeah, so and then it's just his penalties. So what that is to utter loud, threatening, or abusive language, or engage in disorderly or disruptive conduct at any place in the grounds or in any of the Capitol buildings with the intent to impede, disrupt, or
And they forced him to take this plea bargain
disrupt the
for
orderly
this misdemeanor disorderly conduct charge.
So it's a disorderly conduct charge, and if I get into here,
But he's still put on the terrorist watch list, even for a misdemeanor charge.
yeah.
So any kind of misdemeanor charge that has to do with disrupting Congress can immediately put you on the terrorist watch list. That's awesome.
Yeah, so this is his what do you call it?
A statement or
the statement of offense. So I
Okay.
guess this is the prosecutor's
yeah.
opinion on
Yep.
things.
Yep.
Brandon Straka flew to Washington, D.C. to speak at the rally protesting the election results on January 5th and January 6th, 2001, knowing that Congress would be in session to certify the election results of the U.S. Capitol and the vice
People have
president.
gone and protested Congress while it's in session throughout our
Oh, yeah.
nation's history.
So basically, they're saying also Straka got off the
This is
metro.
our capital. Sorry, go ahead.
Straka got off the metro on January 6, 2021, sometime between 2 p.m. and 2 p.m. and 2:20 p.m. He then knowingly entered the restricted area at the U.S. Capitol grounds. So is that the area that they had a permit for to speak at?
Probably, yeah.
Or
probably.
maybe he was behind a fence underneath some bleachers or something. I don't know. While in
Never
the
went inside the building, though.
Yeah, so while in the restricted area, knowing he was not authorized to be there, Straka observed the crowd yelling. Observed the crowd yelling. That's a crime, right? And U.S. Capitol Police trying to prevent people from going into the U.S. Capitol and to manage the unruly crowd. Among other things, he engaged in disruptive conduct by participating, along with others, in yelling "Go, go, go!" to encourage others to enter the U.S. Capitol. Well, that's speculation. While the U.S. Capitol Police were making their best efforts, blah, 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 blah. Straka observed others yelling to take a U.S. Capitol officer's shield. Wait, he observed. So he just observed that. Okay, he didn't participate in it. He recorded a video of what was happening. Okay, yeah, that's true. And in this video, he claimed that the crowd was saying, "Take it, take it." He claimed. Oh, he chimed in with the crowd saying, "Take it, take it." I don't know.
Really?
I'd have to. Oh my goodness.
Oh, I see where you're at now. I'm actually going to show this for.
Yeah,
viewing.
he did this between 2:30 and 2:45 p.m. on January 6th. We're outside the entrance in U.S. Capitol and restricted area on the Capitol grounds. Straka left the U.S. Capitol grounds approximately 3 p.m. Defendant knew at this time he entered the U.S. Capitol grounds that he did not have permission to enter the grounds. Wait, wasn't he supposed to be there for?
Defendant did so with intent to impede, disrupt, or disturb the orderly conduct of a session of Congress.
Yeah, this crap's crazy. And
Wow.
and there's more. We're not going to go into the criminal complaint and all that because that's where they tell this whole long story and oh yeah, and show the evidence. So if you want to, you can just look it up. It's the Justice Department has all of it and it's all in PDF form. You can go check it out for yourself.
Doesn't sound like America.
Yeah, it's the what is it? The Office of Public Affairs, I believe, is where you can.
So much for the right to freedom of
Oh,
speech
no,
and
that's
assembly and
That's Assange. never mind.
protest. No, we actually have a couple videos. I meant to show these earlier when Tulsi Gabbard brought up Kamala Harris receiving the endorsement of Dick Cheney.
Well, it makes sense
And-
though, because this whole event was about unity and real unity. This
yeah.
is the powers that be unifying against you to screw you.
Yeah, check this out, guys. So here's proof. And then during the debate between Trump and Kamala Harris, Kamala stated her proud receiving of the endorsement of Dick Cheney, known war criminal that somehow managed to dodge conviction. But check this out, guys. This is the proof.
Sidetrack on who the former
Oh, I got that up fast. Slow down.
president is. If he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a 4-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the Republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed,
Yeah,
talk
let's
about
actually go back to the
extreme.
beginning of this because that's where the actual endorsement is. My apologies, guys. Here we go. Let's hear this. After the Capitol.
You know, this is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and
there it is. She's proud of that?
Congress member Liz Cheney.
She's proud of that.
Now pull up that the other one of her when she was in that whatever bagel shop.
Oh, I didn't save that clip. I needed that. Yeah. I do have the one of Tim Walz.
But okay, so yeah, let me just give a real brief thing. She was basically in, like, I don't know, it was a bagel shop or something or whatever, and she was asked, like what her opinion on it was, and it was basically, just being like, oh yeah, well, they're such, upstanding, respected politicians, and it's just great to have this endorsement, and we really need to come together, and it shows that we really need to, like, get past the partisan divide and all that crap, and it was just like so full of crap, and it's like, Cheney, really? That's the one you're gonna tote out?
Yeah, that is gross. I'm looking for that video now. I'm not seeing it right off the top, but check this out, guys. So here now, from last night during the vice presidential debate, Tim Walz repeats this, their pride over this endorsement from Dick Cheney.
The support of the democracy matters. It matters that you're here. And I'm as surprised as anybody of this coalition that Kamala Harris has built, from Bernie Sanders to Dick Cheney to Taylor Swift. And
Bernie
a whole
Sanders
bunch of folks.
to Dick Cheney to Taylor Swift. Wow.
I don't know if Taylor
what an amazing
Swift
coalition
wants you saying her name, buddy.
So obviously they're recognizing that a unity coalition has been building behind former President Donald J. Trump. And they were trying to showcase their own coalition. Dick Cheney, proud militaristic neocon that led us into a war.
Didn't Dick Cheney shoot his friend in the face or something like that?
Halliburton made hundreds of millions, billions off of the contracts, exclusive contracts that they got, that they could sell $200 pencils and all that.
Yeah, it's just gross. And though, to give Walz some kudos, last night's debate, he was actually rather civil, and you could see he was actually agreeing with a lot of what Vance had, and it set a good standard for what we should get back to as political debates.
He saw the way that Vance was performing and treating him, and he had to mirror it, which was beautiful, because that is actually
now, mind you, Walz didn't really say much of anything of substance. I know what
it was good to see them debate in that
I know
manner.
what he did in his state, but I don't necessarily know what his plan with Kamala and their plan is. So, but that's
one last clip. Those were both from PBS, guys. And then now we're going to move on over and check out this little video from Reuters. So Julian Assange was finally freed. Now, he did have to make a plea bargain himself with the U.S. government. But this man that has been imprisoned for over 10 years now, I think, 14 years or something like that, unlawfully seeking asylum from the U.S. government trying to come after him for the release, releasing whistleblower obtained documents of U.S. war crimes. And they went after Julian hard. And thank God this man is now free. So let's check this out real fast. Jumping on over and hear what Julian has to say.
Justice, for me, is now precluded, as the U.S. government insisted in writing into its plea agreement that I cannot file a case at the European Court of Human Rights or even a Freedom of Information Act request over what it did to me as a result of its extradition request. I want to be totally clear. I am not free today because the system worked. I am free today after years of incarceration because I pled guilty to journalism. I pled guilty to seeking information from a source. I pled guilty to obtaining information from a source. And I pled guilty to informing the public what that information was.
Yeah, so that source was Chelsea Manning. He was a United States Army intelligence analyst who held top secret U.S. security clearance, who was deployed the forward operating base Hammer in Iraq. And this guy was a whistleblower because he saw some really nefarious stuff. And in our country, well, we used to have protections for whistleblowers, so they could come out with these things without risking being taken out by the feds.
Daniel Ellsberg with the Pentagon Papers, for instance. Yeah.
Oh, and
yeah, Chelsea. Yeah, that's right. She goes by Chelsea now. It was not to dead name, but people might have heard of the name when this occurred. It was Brendan.
I'm not sure.
Or Brandon.
In the legal stuff, it's Chelsea Manning. So. Oh, but back on the Straka thing, also something I found interesting looking through the court documents is not like they required access to every piece of recorded anything, all of his social medias, everything, all of that for misdemeanor, right? Imagine getting busted with a joint roach, and then they're like, no, we want everything on your computer, everything on your phone, everything you've done within social media, all of that. Really? For a dude just standing outside of a building that may have chanted, go, 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 or take it, take it, take it.
Bradley Manning, that's the name.
Bradley Manning.
Bradley. Yeah.
Well, Chelsea can be a boy's name too, so it's just ambiguous.
Yeah.
Yeah. So don't trust the government. Trust corporate media even less. Definitely don't trust pharma companies. And hey, maybe pressure your politicians to make advertising on television and in social media and other things by these big pharma corporations. Make it illegal like it is for cigarettes or booze. Right. Now, mind you, social media, you can advertise booze and stuff like that, but still
it's going to take a major bipartisan movement for us to accomplish any of this.
And dude, remember during COVID, every news things and death update brought to you by COVID, or not COVID, but brought to you by Pfizer.
Oh, they are the major funder of mainstream media news.
Oh yeah,
by far, by a long shot.
And well, they make retarded amounts of money. And where are you guys at? Where are my commie brothers and sisters who really are actual true communists that want communists? Why aren't you calling out these corporations? Why are you just going, yay, Kamala, yay?
Yeah, when all the corporations and the government are actually supporting your cause, you might want to question if that cause is actually legitimate.
But I hear it's called.
You might be being taken.
But that's woke corporatism or woke capitalism. We're not down with that. Well, you don't call it out. So
yeah, let's not be woke. Let's just be awakening. Let's continuously awakening. Let's always be willing to update our frames of reference and change our minds when we come across new information if we find it to be true and good.
And you might be a
for
little
one and all.
grumpy and groggy when you're waking up, so it hurts. Realizing you've been lied to, seeing, looking at the numbers and going through the court documents of how people have been screwed over. It's like getting woken up in the bad way.
It can be a rude awakening, but remember that you are actually coming home to a very large group of people that are together because of love and recognition of shared values and humanity. And it's a liberating experience. It's a liberating feeling to come back home. So, yes, we have been pit against one another. We are in the midst of a game of divide and conquer being inflicted against us all over the world. And it's particularly strong here in the States. The rest of the world is watching, and they're hoping that we take our government back and we bring civility, reason, and protections of freedom and free speech back to this world before it's too late. The doomsday clock is ticking. We are closer to nuclear war than we have ever been. We're literally on the verge of World War III now with Israel and Iran going at each other.
Yeah, Iran, Israel, plus Russia and Ukraine. And then plus, what China's been doing in the South China Sea, plus in the Pacific.
India, they're battling with India. Yeah.
And also they've been buying up property in the United States and stealing our topsoil and literally selling sending our soil back to China. So taking the soil of the homeland. We have invaders taking the soil of our homeland, literally taking
what healthy soil we have left.
Or actually taking it and removing it.
Isn't that nuts? Wow. So this is the world that we find ourselves in.
If America's not on top anymore, do you want Russia or China to be on top?
Right. We got to take it back, fam. We got to take it back. So make sure that you guys get out there, you like and subscribe everybody that we showed you today if you're not already following them, because the more numbers these people get, the more people they can reach. So like and subscribe here on Actuali Podcasts. Share us out there. There is also a podcast side to this show, so you can find us on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, all the places, all of the podcast platforms. And we greatly appreciate your comments, your likes, your ratings, everything. It does indeed help us to reach more people, and go out there and support Russell Brand, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, Brendan Straka, Jimmy Dore, and go ahead and look up Rescue the Republic. There's a lot of speakers we didn't even get to cover today, like Food Babe, and when she was showing us the toxins in our foods and the stuff that we're feeding our children, it was insane to see the comparison.
Well, and she demanded that, she was making the demand that if our government's going to do something, what it needs to do is hold these, basically make it so these companies that are American companies need to sell us the stuff that they're selling to Europe.
Yep.
And we shouldn't be allowed to eat.
Yeah, look at the difference between the Fruit Loops in Canada and the Fruit Loops here. The colors that we use, the artificial dyes we use here in the U.S. to make those colors really pop and be more addicting, to make children eat more of them. They're neurotoxins. They're known carcinogens.
And they're solvents. Like if you
they're not allowed in other countries.
Yeah, if you actually look up these chemicals and what they are, they're solvents. They're like petrosolvents in a lot of cases. So it's like, something that's meant to dissolve other things.
And the chronic rate of illness is higher here than anywhere else in the world right now due to the toxins, the poisons in our food. And of course, Big Pharma's making a lot of money off of all of that. They profit greatly off of children being sick, and so that's the game. That's the place that we find ourselves in. And let's go ahead and respond to some of these comments before we close out here. What do we got?
There's a good comment here from Erica. I feel like this is a time of people overcoming the dogma of their respective parties to simply look for truth and reality. That's exactly what this is, and that's exactly the time we're in.
Yeah, well said.
And also for Ninja,
that's the exciting side of this, that there is a hopeful, encouraging movement that is happening here. We get to wake up together.
And Ninja Bat's last comment, any misdemeanor charge which has a 1-year jail penalty equals no guns allowed to own. Well, with Brandon Straka's thing, it maximum charge was 6 months. So he will still be allowed to be an American gun owner if he chooses to be. So, Linda, yes, to God be the glory.
I've always loved that in Christianity, when you do something that people find admirable, you say, you basically give the credit to God rather than oneself. I really like the selflessness of that. I think that's a beautiful way of being.
Well, what does glory mean? It means to shine. It means shining.
God gets the credit.
And we are the crystalline vessels through which the light of God, the divine, shines through. The glory starts there. Always humbling,
It is. Man, I just turned my
Oh,
freaking airplane mode off on my phone, and oh my god, it's blowing up. I'm gonna go back on airplane mode now. I wanted to see the comments too. I could just bring them up on screen here. But yeah, normally when we're doing these things, guys, we're gonna start formatting the show so that we can talk to you all more while you're here. We've been waiting to build the live stream up to the point where we actually have people. And yeah, thank you guys so much for joining us and all your comments. They help feed the algorithm and get it.
And just remember to be polite and considerate. It's fine to argue, just polite and considerate. Also, we are subscribers only mode. So in order to comment, you got to be a subscriber. It's a lot better for everybody that way, because then you don't have random troll bots coming into it, and it protects us from bot factories as well. Yep. So that's the reason why it is the way it is.
This is the way we got to do it right now, guys, until we have someone that can help us monitor the chat. But anyone out there that wants to help do that, we can put you in a position of authority, so to speak. Help us keep the chat clean.
Yeah, once we figure things out. But yeah,
step by step.
A lot of you guys were watching live tonight. It's like, thank you.
Yeah, that means a lot, guys. Thank you so much. And yeah, definitely hit that subscribe button, smash that like button, throw down more comments. It helps the algorithm more than anything. And you can, once again, you can subscribe to us everywhere podcasts are found as well. And we have a lot of actual old episodes with all kinds of good stuff for y'all out there, guided meditations and some other interesting interviews and deep philosophical dives into the great mysteries of life. DJ and I did an entire series on John Vervaeke's Awakening from the Meaning Crisis, which was one of the most powerful things that I've ever experienced. It's incredibly empowering. And if you're looking for a way to understand how we got into this mess and how we may get out of this mess of division and social decline and breakdown that we are finding ourselves in the midst of, definitely check out that series and John Vervaeke's work in general. He's actually a colleague of Jordan Peterson's that teaches at the University of Toronto as well. So thank you guys so much for tuning in to this episode of Actuali. You can find the full 7-hour video of this rally on Brett Weinstein's channel, or look for the Dark Horse podcast. In fact, that's his channel here on YouTube. So the Dark Horse podcast.
That one's always interesting to watch.
It's a great show.
Very good.
And that you can see all the people that spoke at this incredible historic event there in that main video. And I think that's it, man. Like that's all I got to say for this evening.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Hey, let's go out with an official outro, dudes. And
just play some music.
And friends. Going.
We're trying to get it all together best we can.
We are the media now, guys. We are the media. That's so cool.
Oh, you tried.
I know how to turn it up. There it is. Yeah. We love you.
Yeah.
You. And you. And you. And you. And you. Come on, fam. Be that change that you want to see in this world. We got to change this game from the inside out. The most effective way to create any true and lasting revolution in this world is to ignite that revolution, begin from within. I've been Chris.
I've been DJ.
We are out. Till next time, guys.
Wow.